making models, doing drawings, that kind of thing. Just that whole sense of working in the studio and working with your hands. And then as time goes on, it's nice to begin to introduce them to projects that are more real in the sense of having an actual location where you have landscape and orientation and weather and all these things that are really real. As people at St. Martin's know, things like rain and flooding, we all know about that pretty well. But so yeah, this is one of the first ones that, in that regard, that it was what I would call a real project. And just as an aside, this was kind of by chance. Most of you know Steve Prince. He was there last Sunday, I think, or yeah, last Sunday. We're working with him to design. Again, these are all speculative projects. No one expects they're going to turn into anything real, but you go into them just, you don't really think about that. You just go in there and look for ideas and that kind of thing. But we're working with Steve to design an artist studio in his backyard of his fiance's house. So he's getting married in the spring, and his fiance teaches dance at the college. So it'll be a dance studio and his studio. So, and it's great. He is our client in a very real sense. So in this case, we didn't meet with any of you beforehand. So this is totally just coming out of nowhere for all of you. But so as I was going to get to, I'm sorry, I've kind of gone round and round about this, but this seemed like a nice opportunity for a short project. I was looking for what I would call a sketch project, maybe 2 weeks in duration, as really a search for ideas based on a real location. So a lot of projects will spend a month or 2 months or sometimes a whole semester. So this was really short and sweet, just to look for ideas, but try to have it rooted in some, in a real situation. So that's what this particular project was all about. If I had planned it better, I could have gotten together with Lisa and Kathy and talked about it and said, hey, this could be interesting. What do you think? And it would have been an added bonus maybe to have at least one meeting with people in the congregation who could offer ideas, or what could be done with the zigzag space, and I'm sure there could be hundreds of ideas as to what could happen. But in this instance, we sort of simplified it down to, regardless of what else is going to happen, having some shade there would be a good thing. So it's about shade structures. And then the other assumption is that gathering outdoors is not something that just happened over the past 12 or 14 months. It's probably going to be something that we'll keep doing for a long time. There are a lot of benefits to that. So yeah, so it's a recognition of how maybe our perspectives have changed in the last year because of COVID, but also for other health-related reasons and just being out in nature and all that. When you have a church that has the grounds like this, that it really could be something to really further and build on beyond what's already there, which is quite nice. So anyway, the long and short of it is they were asked to design these shade structures to be, you'll see there's many different versions of what that means, but the location is basically the big space where the zigzag building was. So
I have to ask you if that bird is inside or out.
The bird is inside. It's one room. Does it sound like I'm at the pet store? Probably does. So at least it's not a dog barking, but I can't mute the birds.
I'm sorry, Lisa. I am a bird fanatic. And those are 2 parakeets that live with us. And I could talk a lot about them because they're part of our family. But it does sound like we're in a pet store. I'm sorry. It's just yet another eccentricity.
It's great. It's the whole picture. We're getting the peas land today.
Yeah, they're kind of on fire right now. They're a couple, I won't say more.
That's right. So this is more than you bargained for. So anyway, so maybe I think well, first, let's let the students introduce yourselves, everybody. If you could just, your name, maybe what's your major, what year you are, and so on, just so everybody can connect a little bit to you with the face. Is that okay? So I don't know what order you are on your screen, but Tara, why don't you start?
Hi everyone, my name is Tara Vasund. I am a sophomore at William & Mary in a double major in environmental policy and art history. It's so exciting to be here. I've always wanted to pursue architecture, but this is actually my first class take with Professor Pease that actually teaches architecture. So it's been just incredible so far, and it's so exciting to see that our ideas are, in talks of being used by you all.
Great, thank you. So Savannah? Well, either one, doesn't matter.
Oh, true. Okay. I'm Savannah Singleton. I am a senior, double majoring in anthropology and art history, and I'm thinking I will probably go on to pursue architecture. And yeah, thank you guys, because this was a fun project to work on.
Great, thank you. Okay, Savannah Orsak.
I'm Savannah Orsak. I'm a junior and I'm studying interdisciplinary studies with a concentration in design and merchandising. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
Okay, Khadijah.
Hi, I'm Khadijah. I'm a junior, double majoring in studio art and math, and I plan on becoming an architect. Maybe, don't know yet. But yeah, this class is really fun.
Okay, Gwen.
Hi, I'm Gwen Evans. I'm a senior and I'm a psychology major. And in a couple years, I'll probably apply to get my master's in architecture, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, let's see, Josh.
So hey guys, my name is Josh. I'm a math major and an Italian minor. I plan on pursuing architecture. I'm going trying to transfer to a school for architecture right now, and if not, I'm going to pursue my master's afterwards.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in economics. And I think I might go to grad school for architecture. I really like it, but I'm indecisive, so we'll see what happens.
It's a common trait with architects. Okay, Austin.
Hi, I'm Austin Anderson. I'm senior. I'm majoring in architecture and data science, self-design major.
I think that's everybody, right? Okay, great. Yeah, so that's our group, and
Welcome. You're also good with your mute buttons too, I have to say. I have to give you a shout out for that. Mute and unmute.
I'm sure they've had a lot of practice, more than they want to think about. So this is as much for my students as for the rest of you. I thought I would show you some reference slides that we looked at in the very beginning, just to kind of expand the recognition of what shade structures are already kind of out there in the world. Not that any of these particularly have specific relevance to St. Martin's, but just to begin to think about materials and structure and just different kinds of enclosure, degrees of enclosure, that kind of thing. So I think I'm going to share my screen and run through those fairly quickly. I don't have anything planned to say about it, just to keep it kind of short and quick, but this is what everyone looked at, and we discussed it and talked about some of the things I just mentioned. So just thought it might be helpful for y'all to see that. So So can everybody see this? Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go through these. There are probably a couple of dozen images. Some of these you can tell the setting is, some are urban, some are much bigger in scale than are relevant. But again, it's looking, there are some common threads that tie some of these together, even though at first glance they seem really, very much individual or distinctive one from the other. So let's see. Okay, come on, let's go down. This one's probably a little large for St. Martin's, but it's okay. I think these last couple of slides are just to make the point that obviously landscape and trees in particular can be great shade structures. It doesn't have to be a built solution necessarily. So just a site plan, this was the area that we were all working with. And for a lot of these, if you want a reference point as to orientation, that this tree usually shows up in many of the sketches, and you're all very familiar with that tree. And of course, this was taken before the zigzag was demolished. I think there might be one more. Yeah, so there it is after post demolition, as you all know. So I'll go ahead and move now to the other screen. Whoops, sorry, wrong thing, my bad. Sorry about that. Okay. Is this working for everybody? See the first slide? just that this is an excerpt of the prompt that they were given. So just to say a couple more words, then I'm going to be quiet. It was important to mention to the students that they could think of this as a larger kind of overarching structure that might cover a lot of ground. They were it's almost somewhat of a random constraint was to say that maximum of 50% of that site area that you saw in that aerial view could be covered as a shade structure. And you'll see that some are more, some are less. But so it could be a single structure or a series of structures, and that the space really will probably remain a kind of multi-purpose area. There will certainly be a playground, but it could be an area where, you know, for small receptions or gatherings or liturgical events. I mean, it could be a number of things depending on how any design could develop and what kind of things it might be able to accommodate. But the idea is that these structures could provide some intimate, smaller spaces as well as larger, more publicly oriented ones. So that's probably a good thing to keep in mind as you see some of these, because most of them address that in some way. So, so I will mute myself. And I'm not sure what the order is. I think Savannah Singleton, you're first. So if you want to, you'll have to tell me when you want to move to the next slide, okay? So Savannah, I'm turning it over to you, okay?
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. You can move to the next slide. That's okay.
Okay.
Just describe it. All right. So I was kind of envisioning dividing the space, still having the area where the playground is now be the main kind of playground area still. And then that corner kind of like upper right corner of the lot being a shade structure and kind of garden area more for like adults to sit. And then I was picturing kind of the flow like out of the building, kind of coming out of a service, like walking down that sort of path there on the left. I think that's kind of roughly where the old zigzag structure used to be. And then kind of arriving at that that corner of the lot and having that be a nice place to sit. And the other kind of triangular structure that is roughly where the current playground is would be both sort of playground and then also shade. Professor, can you change to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay. I can't always remember which slides are where. But so as you can see, the structure on the right is kind of lifted up. So there would be a nice sitting area under that, and certain panels, each of those kind of triangular shapes would be, some would be solid, and then some would be kind of like how we saw in the PowerPoint, some would be sort of slatted to let more light in. Also, feel free to unmute and ask any questions. I'm going to assume there's not any. But so then the structure on the left, which is the playground and then also shade structure, sort of, it's that same folded configuration, but some of the folds kind of lean down to touch the ground. And that is also kind of really adjustable. It could be shifted or turned any which way, but I'm envisioning those areas where it touches the ground as you could have a sort of not very steep, like low little like climbing wall, or even if the angle was low enough, some sort of slide off of the structure. And underneath it, there could be room for, fun monkey bars under there, or maybe even there's an area where you could kind of string a hammock up or have some sort of like fun like net that the kids could play in and things like that. Professor, will you change to the next slide? Yes. So you can see that little line where it kind of touches the ground. And then this sort of outside line is the fence. And I was thinking about moving that out just a little bit more so that there was even more play space. And I noticed that there were some garden boxes there now, and I thought that was really nice. And so I just moved those kind of to be on that section of fence there. And then the last kind of change is that tree that Professor was talking about. Kind of, I noticed also there was like a nice little circular like meeting area with little stumps, and basically just building kind of like a circular bench or something around that tree, and then moving those stumps kind of over to that corner as still that nice like sort of gathering area, because that was a very kind of nice, peaceful, quiet corner, I thought. Professor, you can keep moving through the slides. Yeah, so that's a better view of under the kind of adult shade structure, and there could be, you know, benches there or garden boxes against that kind of back fence, or like however you wanted to change it or adapt that space. Okay, Professor, you can keep, I can't remember which slides I have. Yeah, and that's just a view of kind of where the sun would be like around, I was guesstimating the time you'd be getting out of a service, like how the shadows would fall. You're good to move to the next one, Professor. Okay.
Professor, do you mind if I go now? I have a meeting at 7:45. Like just present my project. I just don't want to run out of time. I think you're muted.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Savannah.
Thank you, Savannah.
That
And
was
also, just real quickly, everyone, I thought we would do, although if you have a pressing question when anyone's speaking, please do ask a question, but we'll certainly come back for questions, discussion, whatever, after everyone gets to show you their thing. Excuse me. So, okay, Austin, turn it over to you.
I didn't mean to cut in too. If there's any questions for Savannah, please go ahead.
Yeah, we can come back to it, so that's fine. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, my structure is kind of two independent structures that are connected in a central focal column. The first one is an overhanging wooden lattice structure that partitions the site from the parking lot, and then the other structure is synthetic tarps that are held by varying heights of concrete columns, varied heights, multifarious concrete columns. So you can just go through and look at the various images of it.
I should just add one thing here on this one. This is a digital model that Austin had. And if we had a different kind of presentation, we could have used that actual model, and you can spin it around. So these are just screenshots. So they're much more limited than, you know, what you could actually see with this model, but so be it. That's what we have. So sorry, Austin, go ahead.
No, yeah, and I guess I can comment. Obviously the wooden structure casts some nice shadows that you can see there. The tarps were mainly there for if there was any bad weather, rain or storm, so that you would have some actual cover, and that you could have seating underneath the wooden structure for gatherings. It almost has like a amphitheater feel to it. And feel free to just go through the images at your own speed.
I think this is the last one, actually.
Okay, perfect.
But this one's pretty informative, I think. So.
Are the poles wooden that are holding up the membrane or what
Yeah.
do you envision?
I had them as cement, but with tile, but they could be wooden. Well, probably the central one should be cement, but the other ones could be wooden.
Okay, shall we keep moving? All right, thanks, Austin. If there are
Yeah.
questions,
Thanks.
I'll try to answer them for you. So, okay, thanks. Okay, let's go back up to Khadijah. You want to go to the next one, Khadijah?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I didn't realize how small it looks. I apologize for that. So basically, I am really drawn to how lines and curves relate to one another. So in a lot of my pieces, you're going to see a lot of curves. I think it creates a nice balance of movement. So basically, in the left bottom corner, it shows the shade structures. They're basically wooden dowels stacked on top of each other at an angle that come out over benches, providing the shade, but it's at a curve. Thank you for doing that. And then the circle in the bottom right corner is the play area. So I kind of changed the orientation of the playground. I swapped that with where the zigzag was. And I was debating on whether or not the play area should also have shade structures. I think I said that there were some. I'm not sure about that yet. But basically, I just wanted a balance of these shade structures with vegetation while also having places to relax. So in the upper corners, there are planter boxes, which would be a peaceful activity for any age to do. And then right beside it is a painted labyrinth. I put that there because I wanted there to be a place that could be kind of sacred, close to the bell tower. That way it wouldn't be as noisy if people were at the bell tower having a ceremony. Around that infamous tree, there is a curved bench, which kind of relates back to the shape of the shade structures. Behind the shade structures are trees. I put those there just for the sake of safety, I guess, for the kids that would be playing there. I mean, obviously they probably would be under supervision, but I think that provides a nice bit of protection and security when you're in this area. I also put some green space around the children's area. Close to the labyrinth, I thought of putting hammocks and possibly another play area for older children. That way they were separate from the younger children. The orientation of the children's play area, it has openings. And they're not exactly in the middle, but the first opening is close to the shade structures. That way, if parents or guardians were sitting there, they would be able to relax while also keeping an eye on their kids. And then the other opening goes into a little picnic area that would have a couple of tables for people to socialize and eat and do whatever they wanted. But yeah, this is my idea. I think that about sums it up.
Good. I think we can see it pretty well, Khadijah. It's
Okay.
not too small. Don't worry.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Elizabeth. You want me to move past the words?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I have three ideas. Maybe they're all pretty simple and similar. But when we visited the site, I was really drawn to the big cross. So I have the seating area with some shade structure so that people could appreciate that area more. And then wrapped around the playground is a continuous bench, so adults could like sit and watch the kids as they play, and it would also serve as a fence to the parking lot so kids wouldn't just run out into the street. And then up there on this in the second drawing above are just different designs that you could have for the seating. You can go to the next one.
Okay.
This is another one with a seating facing the cross, and instead of before I had the curved shade, this would be more of like I'm not sure what it's called, but they're cross with some vines going up. I thought that was really a pretty idea. And then again, seating around with some shade structure. You could also go to the next one. And then this one is a little bit different. Instead of seating around the playground, I just have a gazebo in the middle. And that way you could separate, kind of like what Khadijah was saying, you could separate the older kids and the younger kids with the playground areas. And then again, a tall shade structure facing the cross. That's all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
So Austin's. Okay, Tara, should we go to the next slide or?
Yes, please. There's a lot of different images there. So when I first looked at the site, the thing that immediately caught my eye was the cross-shaped bell tower, kind of like how Elizabeth just mentioned. I wanted to create a design that would lead the eye around the yard and up the bell tower in the back in a fluid, seamless motion. So I thought of designing shade structures that were curvilinear and shell-like, and I thought that would be a good way to kind of creatively border the park area while drawing attention to the bell tower in the back. And the wavy shape of the shade structures also allow them to be easily integrated into the fencing of the playground. So I just incorporated the fencing and the shade structure so they were just one continuous curve. I kind of like the idea of them being one continuous structure rather than separate, so it didn't really divide your visual intention. Similar to how the Sydney Opera House with the concrete shells kind of overlapping each other looks, the shade structures in the back would kind of be nested behind the other, and the space between would serve as a shaded walkway from the parking lot to the church's side entrance. Ideally, this would be a cobblestone walkway that would just be flanked by flowers, trees, and plants, so it would be a nice small little path. Other features of the park include a bench built around that famous tree back in the corner, and with a small bridge connecting the bench to the raised floor of the play area, because I know as a kid I always thought bridges were so cool, so I'd like to add that to the play area as well. The park benches would ideally be built into the concave opening of the shell structures, and there would be more trees planted along the sides of the park. So lots of trees, lots of wavy shapes, and some of the buildings that served as inspiration for me were the Crystal Bridges Art Museum in Arkansas, which has kind of this turtle shell rooftop motif that runs throughout the site, and of course the Sydney Opera House in Sydney.
Okay.
Thanks.
There's more.
Just 3 different images. The first image you see like no play structure. The second one has the play structures, and a third has the church in the back. But it's kind of hard to notice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else, Tara?
No, I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Savannah.
Okay, so this idea is relatively minimal to kind of open up the opportunity of, or the possibilities of what can be done within that space. So I divided this series of shade structures into 4 sections in order to emphasize that it's a multifunctional space, but it's also cohesive and communal. And so those functions will then be decided on by the church community or those using the space. The best way I can kind of describe it is it's similar to like a series of pergolas, but at a larger scale and not including any greenery. And then they also align in a way to frame walkways that kind of encourage movement up to and through the structures as you're maybe walking up for a service or back to the parking lot after a service. And then the structures together have various beam patterns and spacing distances that would cover the ground in various stripe patterns. And they would also vary in height in order to diversify the amount of sunlight and shade that can come through those beams and under into the structure, depending on the position of the sun or the time of day or time of year. And like I said, it's meant to be multifunctional. So one structure could be a shaded sitting area or a covered play space, or even just shade a grassy hill. You can go to the next slide, Professor. I also included an alternative design where two of the structures are on the opposite side of that main pathway axis across the lawn, which just ultimately serves to better define the shaded areas from the open space and to kind of utilize the whole space rather than just one side and kind of integrate it as a more circular design. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Gwen.
Okay, so I kind of wanted to integrate like playground with like a more flexible use space for attendees of the church in general. And I also, one of my other goals was to kind of create a more organic and creative playground type structure as opposed to just your generic plastic playground that you see all the time. And so I kind of chose to just keep it one structure to make the space a little bit more cohesive and less visually busy, and to kind of marry the two activities that are going on there, which would be like meetings with adults of the church as well as like children playing at the playground. So it's one long continuous wooden structure, and you'll see on the left there is like facing the like street entrance, and then the right side of the image is towards the church, and the right side is more of that play area, and you can go to the next. They probably have better images there. Here's a drawing I did that kind of shows it a little better as well. I chose to have the structure meet the ground at one point because I feel like when I was a kid, like having levels and kind of like prospect and refuge areas within a space was really exciting, and kind of allowed for my creativity to thrive when I was imagining scenarios with friends, things like that. So I wanted to do that a little bit. And then I also integrated swings onto the structure to make it more playgroundy. Everybody loves swings. And then on the left there is actually kind of like a stage type area, and there's no permanent seating, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a kind of presentation area or a performance area, but it's there if you need. But because that area is off to the left and right by the street, I was kind of intending to have that more adult area as kind of like a barrier between entrance from cars, things like that, in between like children playing, and then the church beyond. You can move on to other pictures. So yeah, that's just more, there's a plan view on the top right. You can kind of see where it goes throughout the space. Suggested tree placement for kind of, more barrier from the street. And then I wanted to have the slats be a very natural wood to kind of match the materiality of the rest of the church buildings that are on the site, because it's a pretty organic structure and the buildings are not. So I wanted to have them communicate a little bit. I think that's it for that.
Thanks.
Hi, so this is me. This is my first time presenting, and I have a lot of ideas, so I'm sorry if I like mumble or like kind of switch things around. But with this idea, I was really drawn to like a lattice structure, with this idea of like porosity and creating like private and public spaces. With this idea of like crisscrossing wooden beams and lattices, you could create these really private, like intimate spaces where like you could be talking like with your family or your spouse, but still see like the entire church congregation around you and just like feel the presence of everyone. Along with that, lattice creates like this really beautiful shadow. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to be inside of like this big lattice structure, but it just creates these wonderful like diamonds on the side, like on the ground, and these wonderful sight lines. So I kind of wanted to take this idea to the extreme and create like a rectilinear structure with a lot of just a lot of different squares on the ground, all made out of these lattice, so that as you walk through, your like sight lines through the whole piece change, and everything that you're seeing is like constantly a little bit different and stimulating. While also like a rectilinear structure made of squares is relatively easy to build. It's relatively straightforward. You build up and then support beams. But yeah, we can go forward just to see next. So the structure is built in 3 different parts. The first 3 are on the right side. They're all intersecting in the middle. This is the back of the piece right now, which is kind of hard to understand. Maybe the next photo. So this would be, in my head, where you could enter from the parking lot. You come into this little area where you have a lot of different seating. There's 2 different structures that are built directly onto it on both sides. So on the left, you can see the second structure, and you can't really see it in this photo, but there is a big opening which has the same structure as, yeah, there's an opening there, and then actually in between the 2 buildings, yeah, right there, there's the same structure which mirrors this crisscrossing shape with an opening that you can like walk through everywhere. Next image. So I wanted to try to get an image of what it would be like to be kind of inside of here. You can see all these really large wooden beams crisscrossing, and all these little benches and chairs. This is kind of what it'd be like if you can imagine a congregation of people sitting here midday, maybe after congregation, sitting, eating lunch, talking, and just feeling like they can like, I feel like you can really inhabit this space, and the architecture is strong, but it's very like complementary towards like a social experience. Yeah, next slide. Or is that all? That's all. Oh, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. This entire structure I would picture being made out of wood, along with all of the benches and tables in the space. And there's a great little courtyard. I don't know if you can see through, but there's a great courtyard in which all the structures kind of coalesce around the center courtyard. And I pictured a giant tree and a bunch of benches. Maybe in the first image you can kind of see. Yeah, right there in the center. And I picture there to be a lot of benches and a big tree that actually peeks through the top of the structure.
Thanks.
I think you're muted, Professor.
Someone always has to say that at least once. Yeah, so I think I can stop sharing, and if you want to, and anyone who's here wants to ask questions to the group or to anyone individually, now's the time to do it. And you have to choose one. We'll start working on it Saturday.
Ed, may I ask Savannah number 1? I don't recall the last name. I'm sorry. What is the material of your canopy-like part of your design?
You know, did she have to leave? I think she did.
Oh, okay.
But I can answer it for you, Bruce. Even though it looks like it could be, it looks, you know, from the model, it looks more like a concrete shell. But I think she imagined it being a frame thing. And I think she did mention some of the different planes could be slatted or, you know, more lattice-like to let light through and rain, and others might be solid to give more of a shelter. So it's a challenging structural thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of these do you want to build, Pickett?
I think you're muted, Pickett. We didn't get your answer. Okay.
I'm fascinated by all of them and intimidated by all of them.
Intimidated?
Yeah.
Don't be intimidated. That's not what we want.
I know. Thinking of the building is what is intimidating.
Oh, well, you know, it's, I think in a study like this that really is short and, you know, quick, the physical practicality of it or feasibility, the assumption is that would be folded into it. And obviously that would change everything quite a bit for many of them. So I see what you mean by intimidating that way. Yes, some of these would be very challenging, but yeah, it's not that we don't think that's important. It's that with a group like this, where some of these people are first semester having ever done it and some are more experienced, it's really, the point of this one was to really sort of expand the notion or the ideas of what could happen there.
Wonderfully creative.
But very good point to make, so.
Hey, Josh, do you intend for the roof to keep rain out for the whole structure?
Yeah, I pictured this being relatively tall ceilings. So from anywhere from the smallest ceiling to be about 12 feet, the largest to be about 18 feet. That way we could have these lattice walls that create these wonderful lighting and shade on the ground. But also the very top, I pictured it being completely solid. So you would be able to be in there no matter what time of the year it would be.
Very neat.
I was fascinated by just kind of the resonances between some of the designs and some things I've heard parishioners talking about, you know, over the years. I think it was Khadijah who had the Labyrinth, you know, and that's certainly something that people have talked about. And I also just find it fascinating how the playground, you know, is so central, and it is, but it's like, I think, and this might just be me, but it's like, just seeing it from that perspective, you know, it's more like that's the co-op, you know, I'm on my way into the building, like, but when you look at the whole space holistically, it's clearly like the playground is, you know, looms large, I guess. So I thought that was really interesting that's one of the things that was kind of an aha for me, just looking at all the designs, was like, yeah, that we've got this big playground, like that's a thing, you know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, and that's funny. I think I talked about it maybe more than anyone else, because I felt like that was a good thing to try to reimagine. You know, did it need to all be consolidated? And there, you know, a couple of the schemes had them maybe separated by age. You know, that's a fairly common thing. Yeah, and I don't know why I was really necessarily encouraging that. I mean, having it all together makes sense from a parent standpoint. You kind of know generally where they're going to be, but Yeah, I just thought it's a big space, and it could sort of take different forms within the confines of that space, assuming it's all going to be fenced in. But yeah, it's an important part of it. It really is.
And you
You
went,
know,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa, please.
I just was going to say you went kind of quickly past your instruction, you know, the excerpt from your instructions, but I found that really intriguing, just your kind of quick snapshot, like playful, but, you know, reverential, maybe, I can't remember if that was the right word, but just, you know, it was just interesting, like capturing something about the vibe of St. Martin's, you know, and how much space and architecture and landscaping and all of that, you know, send those signals about who, you know, who are we?
And that's a nice way to put it, with, you know, landscape and built things and all that. I mean, it's a big enough space to where it really can be, it can kind of contain different personalities, I think, within that, or could, for different uses. Yeah, and I guess one that comes to mind, I think Gwen's had that area with the sort of elevated floor. And, you know, so that could, easy to imagine that as either performance or services or whatever, depending on the nature of the roof structure overhead. But then if everything's movable, that's just the platform to play on, you know, so things are not, hopefully things have multiple uses or can be seen and used in different ways too, so.
I thought it was a very good idea. I saw lots of drawings of trees, but no one spoke about that. But, you know, trees are probably the cheapest way to go, but it takes 20 years for you to get the shade from them. And,
yeah,
you know, but having something that like the lattice work on top of two different spaces or in one space with different types of lattice work, that would work in very nicely as a tree, you know, started to mature. And in the wintertime, you would not have leaves. In the summertime, it would be, you not only have the lattice work, but you'd have the trees giving you the shadows on the ground. So it would be very interesting to see that mature.
Yeah, you know, I think you're exactly right, Dean. I mean, we did talk a lot about trees, but right now in that immediate area, there's only that one tree.
Yeah.
And if you imagine trees that are really, I mean, I showed those images. One of them was Bryant Park in New York, which those are probably 70-year-old London plane trees, you know, these big, beautiful canopies.
Yeah.
But those, I mean, it's hard to argue you need more, that you don't really need any more than that. That's a beautiful structure in and of itself, but it takes decades and it takes maintenance and they die. And so what happens in between? So your comment is a pretty good one, having that mix of lattice structures and trees. The lattice is kind of a more immediate stand-in tree version.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I wanted to say, Tara, I really liked your shell structures. We have been to Crystal Bridges and we're just fascinated with the architecture there. It really is quite lovely, and it can be an intimate space with that feeling of enclosure, and yet they're out in the open to some extent. So that was very intriguing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I highly recommend you go to Bentonville if you haven't been already. It's just a gorgeous little place.
It is.
We're going back.
I hope so too. I hope to do so this summer. It's just, I can't stay away for too long.
Oh, understandable.
Yeah, I wish we could have a road trip, field trip, but not quite ready for that yet. Post-COVID. So any other questions, comments? Just so you know, this is just a great experience for for everyone to just to be able to present their work to people who know a lot about the place and have a lot invested in it emotionally and spiritually and other ways. So I think they certainly understand that and really appreciate the chance to talk about it and get your comments. So very generous of all of you to show up.
Thank you. It was really fascinating. Yeah, thank you. And
wonderful job
yeah,
on everyone's part.
Very nice job. Very nice.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. Yay.
Yay.
So maybe, although this is my last semester at William and Mary, or I would say we'll do it again next semester. But,
Oh, I didn't know that. Well,
yep.
well, I'm glad this all came together now then.
Yeah, it's good timing, right?
It's funny, I just sent him a text and I said, you should teach until you die.
Students would appreciate that, looks like, just looking at their faces.
You know, why are you stopping? Teach until you fall over.
Right.
Maybe I'm ready to fall over.
For those of us who tend to be pretty practical, the creativity was just opened up all kinds of possibilities that practical people don't even think about.
Yep.
And it was very, very creative and interesting and enjoyable.
But you know, Pickett, for me, where the magic truly is in the real project is where you can take these big ideas and, you know, just kind of blowing up the balloon of ideas. But then when you can, and it has to happen in a real project, you bring that practical into it, and then more unexpected things happen through that process of, you know, getting it within budget and making it real. And that's the hardest part, but it's the most gratifying part too. So unfortunately, we don't ever get to really do that in a studio setting, but it really is, that is the magic part. So
I can't remember which student focused a good bit on the bell tower, but that really checked as a central point of focus.
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple of them did. I think Tara did. I think Elizabeth did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some others too. I think all of them were real. When we made the sort of site visit, that was, you know, that's such a peaceful little oasis within the whole, just in the grounds. And the tower itself is, you know, that's such a, I've always liked that, just as this really powerful, simple structure. And I think the students connected to that too. So
Yeah, it just opens up so much, you know, just the little, you know, comments about people gathering or performances or, you know, intimacy and community. It's just like you could, you know, you just go to town with all that stuff and
yeah.
reflect, you know, spiritual reflection kind of on it. So.
Well, now hearing your comments, you know, I do kind of regret we didn't meet first and then dive into it. But again, maybe there'll be another time. So.
Yeah, and there's something great about just the freshness, you know, of the perspective with no, unmoored kind of, just from here. I'm looking at the space, and here's what popped into my head. I think that's really
Yeah, and the fact that even without any input from anyone except me, there are some things that kind of hold true and seem more kind of universally true to the location, to that place, that specific place.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Andy. Don't let your, oh well, his computer died.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for
thanks to all of you
so much for the idea and for your time. Good luck with the rest of the semester, and blessings on all of your teaching and learning in this strange environment.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been great. It's a good group. It's a really good group. So,
Ed, I think it'd be nice to be your student.
oh,
Oh, yeah.
It
well,
really is. It is.
I'm so mad I only get to take his class for one semester.
well, I don't know.
Maybe
Maybe
he'll
there'll be
take
another
tonight.
opportunity. Who knows? Who
Teach
knows?
till you drop.
That's right. Yeah, teach till you die.
Or you could
Thanks, Ed.
retire and raise birds.
I'll leave that to Emily.
Thank you, Ed.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Good night.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Bye.
week.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Bye-bye.
Here.
activity.